Welcome to the third annual virtual Aquaponic Cannabis Conference. Please support these companies. They took the time to educate us during this conference.
I got too many screens going. Thanks a lot for joining us, Bain. For those of you guys that don't know, Bain and I worked together previously on projects in Oklahoma, as well as Texas. That's actually how we met originally. Bain was working at one of the largest organic certified vegetable facilities. Then when I was working in Oklahoma, I managed to recruit him up north into Oklahoma and work with weed instead of lettuce and work with the devil's lettuce instead. So I think he has a little more fun up there than he did down in Texas. But thank you so much for joining us. Bain is the head cultivator of Vertica Aquaponics, which is one of the actually the largest aquaponics cannabis facility in Oklahoma, and one of the largest in the country. So thanks a lot for joining us, and take it away.
Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be a part of this whole thing. With everybody here, all the knowledge getting passed around, it's a great privilege to be a part of it. So yeah, happy to be here. I was going to go ahead and get to sharing my screen. We got a little slideshow for y'all here today. Is everybody able to see that just fine? Awesome. Well, like y'all had already heard a time or two by now, my name is Bain Howard. I'm the head cultivator here at Vertica Farms. We are a medically licensed aquaponic cannabis facility operating in Oklahoma. So just kind of, I guess, the subject of my talk today, I wanted to just really take part in this educational knowledge sharing experience we've got going here. So I want to tell you all a little bit about who I am, where I come from, my experiences in aquaponics, and then the majority of it, my focus today is going to be on our facility at Vertica, kind of our process, how we do what we do. So yeah, thanks for joining me and tuning in to listen. So yeah, here, this is me. I was originally born South Lake, Texas, born and raised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I went to school for agriculture, actually. I went to Texas A&M University, studied agricultural system management, got a minor in business administration, both of which have been extremely helpful in the weed game, funnily enough. It had told me that going to school in Texas to start off with, I might not have believed you. But my farming career experience really began down there when I was going to school. The first time I actually heard the words aquaponics was part of a course I was taking. We were actually doing a profitability study for a man who was doing small scale 1 to 2 acre organic veggie lots. And we were doing a study for him as part of our coursework to prove to people and provide some material showing that that's still a viable way to live, produce food for yourself and your family, and make money while you're doing it. He had a little aquaponic farm that was tied into his whole thing. So saw the fish, saw the veggies, kind of fell in love right away. I was fortunate enough to find a different farm that was a little closer to where I was living and going to school at the time. It was Earth Galley Farms at the time, also Aquatic Greens Farm, the name they're still operating under today. A really family-oriented, education-based program they had out there. We just had deep water culture. We were doing vegetables, growing tomatoes, a couple rows of corn and squash out back, and we had a team of people out there doing community-supported agriculture. So we were doing little baskets we would build with whatever was seasonal, fresh, both from ourselves and then local vendors. Putting together these baskets and then running home deliveries and taking those, door to door and trying to improve the quality and quality of food and produce that people were getting. So did that for a few years. I guess graduated or moved to a larger aquaponics facility from there, still in the produce vegetable sector. It was up in Terrell, Texas. We were doing, like I said, commercial lettuce production. we were operating at a volume of around 7,000 or 6,000 heads of lettuce every week, year after year, or week after week, month after month, all year long. Trying our best to supply national chains of grocery stores with the little living lettuce you see in the clamshells with the roots still attached. That was our game. We were playing that for quite a while. Had a lot of fun, learned a whole lot doing that. Steve had mentioned it was after a year or two of doing the lettuce thing, Oklahoma kind of legalized. Came up here. I was always interested as a young adult in cannabis industry, what it all was involved. Everything that this plant can do and provide for people has always kind of fascinated me. Of course, down in Texas, that's not something that was allowed by the great state of Texas. So didn't really do much in terms of the cannabis plant while I was down there. But when Oklahoma came around, I've got family up here, they're right next door. So we popped across the border, moved up here. I guess it's about 3 years ago now. Was involved in a couple of different projects, from building ground up a aquaponic system. I actually worked with Steve on that project. We did a lot of the designs. We put together this a great greenhouse up there. That was a really good time. Like I said, fantastic learning experience. We did a lot of plumbing, a lot of digging in the dirt in the hot Oklahoma summer. So yeah, lots of fun memories out there. Did a good amount of fishing as well. We always looking to include cannabis and fish, whether it was at work or in the off time. So now that kind of brings us to today. I'm here at Vertica Farms. We are, like I said, we're a medically licensed facility. All in all, between our two buildings, you can kind of see here, we're right around 10,000, or actually just under 10,000 square feet of flower and canopy space here. Now that includes about 4,000 or 5,000 plants at any one given time. We are doing a perpetual monthly harvest, so at all times we've got plants in flower or late flower, early flower, veg, clones, 1 gallons, all that stuff's constantly turning through the greenhouse year round. So it's a lot of moving parts, but we really like that because, like I said, it gives us perpetual harvest every month. We're able to bring new stuff and adapt to the climate and everything as it's changing. We're not all cards in on a single hand, hoping this one room turns out well. Of course, we treat every room as though it's the only one, but when you've got another one coming up behind it, that obviously influences your decisions in a lot of ways. So our current farm, it is a renovated farm. We did not come into a blank facility. This is one that was previously a lettuce farm. It was one of the kind of mail order deals. Put peg A into slot B, and if you follow all the instructions at the end of the day, you'll have yourself a lettuce farm. It worked as that for some years before I got here. They were doing lettuce, elderberries. They had the deep water culture where they were doing all the lettuce. They had the gutter style NFT systems and media beds here. Now there was also somebody else had come along. Adjustments were made to the farm, as often happens in these kind of things. But I'm now on board as part of the team. We've made our major plumbing renovations. We've been running this current system now for going on 2 years, which is we run our mother plants in a dual root zone setup. And then we also have living soil containers that are on rolling benches that we irrigate with aquaponic system water, as well as other different K&F inputs and whatever kind of top dressing and stuff like that we need kind of as the plants are calling for it. A little bit about the nuts and bolts of the greenhouse itself. We do have automated climate controls. So there's a programmable logic controller, a little PLC that is all constantly taking temperature, light, humidity readings, compiles all that data together, keeps it in a nice logs form where we can look back on it and make adjustments, and then also control the environment that we provide for the plants through some of the tools you see here, our misters, heaters, evaporative cooling walls, all that kind of fun stuff. Like I said, we are running rolling benches with the container plants. You can kind of see those down there in that bottom picture. Of course, we're trellising all these plants up, so by the time they get all heavy, they're not falling down onto the tables or causing a whole bunch of mess or anything like that. So, excuse me. I think one of the biggest points, and a lot of people sometimes skimp on this, but it's a harsh lesson to learn when designing a greenhouse or when taking one over. Either way, it's a redundancy in your system. It's crucial for long-term success. Eventually, no matter what, if you're a successful operating business, the goal is to stay in business year after year, and eventually there's going to be a snowstorm up here in Oklahoma. There's going to be a tornado that rolls through. Some guy's going to hit the telephone pole. Power's going to go down. Something's going to happen. And when it does, you need to be prepared as much as you can for that. Really, it starts at the design stage. So from day one, you need to integrate and plan your system so that it can be as fail-proof as possible, or at least when it does fail, there's quick, easy ways to get everything back up and running. So from the design standpoint, that's trying to make one single pump run your whole system. I've seen systems where they had this pump feeding that tank that then went across the farm over here and drained into a sump, and then that hit a valve, and it's prone to fail. So as much as possible, simplifying things, having a single pump pulling from some central sump and recirculating your system makes it so that when inevitably that pump goes wrong or you lose power, it's easy to get everything back up and running again. That goes doubly for kind of all the equipment I've listed out here. You need a backup generator or something that can kick on and turn on your pumps, keep your water flowing. Obviously critical for aquaponics is making sure all the air blowers are running. Then you can't only focus on the fish. You've got all the plant things you got to worry about as well. So all your exhaust fans, your light depth curtains, everything you got to do to keep the climate itself so you're not toasting a greenhouse full of plants. That's all critical. So you can do that in a number of ways. Obviously, there's backup generator. There's multiple different options for those. You need to take your list, kind of like I've got here, and really put together your critical wattage, what you need to do to get by, to make it for a day, make it for a week, and then size your generator appropriately for that, whether you're going to need the natural gas or propane or diesel fuel, whatever they, sell any kind of generator to fit the fuel that you're able to get and source and use at your farm. And those things need to be able to run all your critical systems. It also helps, in our case, we're a hybrid style greenhouse. So our exhaust fans and intake and outlet vents all need to be able to be opened, even if there is no power at the farm. If something happens with the backup generator, all of our stuff has been designed in a way, and we've gotten greenhouses that you're able to plug a battery operated drill into it and crank that thing on, close your vents, open your vents, or in the case of keeping your photo period right, you can close and open the shade curtains and the blackout curtains as well with that. Obviously, nobody wants the photo period messed up. That can really give you a whole bunch of headaches, especially when it comes to cannabis. Now, if anybody had tuned into the commercial panel just before this, we touched on something that I think is super important. It kind of goes hand in hand with the generators, and that's something known as an auto dialer. It's basically an emergency alert system. You take this, little black box, you mount it on the wall, and you can plug in all kinds of different auxiliary sensors into it that can measure. Really, there's just about anything under the sun. You can do your environmental temperature, the presence of current to tell if the electricity is flowing to your pumps and blowers. You can set it up for air pressure on the manifolds that your actual air system goes into too. So even if a pipe gets kicked and broken at some point in your system, the auto dialer senses that the pump is still running and air is still blowing, but nothing's getting to the fish. You can still alert. It can call somebody. Because as we've said, and as unfortunately I personally have learned this. Things can go wrong really quickly in the aquaponic system. You've got 15, 30 minutes before you need somebody on site who's able to hit those switches, turn the backup pump on, or do something in order to remedy some of these situations. Because when you're dealing with a living aquaponic system, all those things are alive. They've got their needs, their biological oxygen demand does not stop just because the power went out. You've got to be able to feed those microbes, feed those fish, and keep everybody happy, even though the juice isn't always flowing. And that's something you have to prepare for. So with all the scary stuff, I guess, kind of out of the way, I wanted to show you all a little bit about the farm. Here I've got a little video. This is just running through our fish tank room. So we do run a combination of koi, which you saw in that first tank there. And then when we inherited this farm, it was set up as the classic lettuce and fish model. So we do still have a bunch of holdover tilapia, but they're not a bad fish. I don't mean to imply that by any means. They get that nickname, the bulletproof fish, for good reason. We like them. We keep them around because they are just little tanks. If you feed them, they're going to do their thing, and they'll keep doing it day after day as long as you keep giving them what they need to do. Now, a little bit about kind of how the flow through our system works. Let me back this video up here, and I can kind of give you the play-by-play as we move through everything. So we do run a fully coupled recirculating system, at least between our fish tanks and our mother plants. It's continuously recirculating water. That's all the inlets you see here on the sides of the tanks with water coming in. That's straight out of, actually these mother plants you see behind me, if you see my screen. It comes straight out of there, flows into the tanks. And then in these tanks you see marked clarifier, that's just a very basic rudimentary sedimentation tank. The little baffle in the middle forces water to flow down and around, depositing a majority of the solids, not everything, but a majority of the heavy solids at the bottom of the bottom tanks. Water then flows through our mineralization tanks that you see behind there, which are, again, just another simple physical barrier that's designed to capture solids and keep those from flowing through. Let's skip forward in this. You can also see in the background, after passing through those tanks, it does flow through a moving bead reactor. So we've got one of those in line that's always there working on the system. We also do pull off the solids and sludge from the bottom of these clarifiers, run those through a little additional mineralization loop. There's a little polishing filter that will get those solids out of after we've aerated them and really tried to wring every little bit of nutrients that we can out of those fish solids, and before filtering those out and then taking the clear water off the top of that and reintroducing that into the recirculating system. So that's kind of through the fish room there. From that point, we walk out into the greenhouse, and now, as anybody who's kept fish knows, water quality is critical. There's really no limit to the different parameters you could check as far as water quality goes in an aquaponic system. We have a couple of different ones that we're always trying to stay on top of and continuously monitor. Some of those things I've got kind of listed up there: temperature, pH. There's a few different monitors out there that let you continuously, I can pull this guy up. I can pull the phone up anytime, pull up my app and see what temperature, pH is on the system. Not that we have a lot of swings or anything crazy that's happening there, but it is good. Gives everybody a little peace of mind when you can check and make sure, nothing's gone crazy. Nobody's knocked the bottle of acid into the system or left the fill tank on and is blowing, ice cold rainwater into the system when we're not expecting it. It helps kind of keep tabs on those things. Now, in addition to that, we do also at the farm do a bi-weekly test. So every 2 weeks, we are taking water samples. We'll send those off to a third-party lab to check nutrient content. That's more for the plant's sake, to see exactly what's getting fed to them. Whereas we do a little more frequently test the things that are critical to our fish health, things like dissolved oxygen, and then your nitrate, ammonia levels, things like that. You can kind of see here, there's several different suppliers for these little dropper tests. I know it was mentioned earlier that Canna Industries has a couple of different meters that will quantify some of these exact values, so you don't have to worry about looking at the little color sheets and going, is that 1, is that 2, where do we actually fall on the scale? So that helps with a little extra peace of mind. But at the end of the day, you're always checking all these different parameters. I've included a little picture here of something that we undertook at the farm this last summer, because really one of our biggest, parameter that makes a huge difference in our plant health, fish health, everything is our water temperature. What we've done here in these pictures you see behind or on the slideshow is just right behind our greenhouse. We went in and excavated quite a bit of dirt out so we could get these PEX coils that we made and wrapped all together. Took quite some time. Laid out in there, and basically what this is a very rudimentary, low electricity passive heat exchanger. So water flows through these PEX coils you see in the beds, then goes outside, flows deep underground where you've got a consistent temperature in that soil all the time. The water passing through there obviously exchanges heat with the surrounding ground, and that cooler water comes back in and circulates through the system. It has definitely helped, or notably helped, take some of the edge off in the middle of the summer. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still get warm, but this has been, in my experience, extremely cost effective, certainly compared to like large scale chillers. For something of this system volume, we run about 100,000 liters in the system. Trying to move that much, the temperature of that much water with the power of electricity, it's a losing game when it comes time to pull that electricity bill out. So this is a way we've found that helps us influence temperature, and all we have to do is run a pump to move the water through here time and time again. And we really click this thing on in the spring and let it run all summer long, and like I said, it helps take a little bit of the sting out of the water there. Now, as far as how plants actually move through our system, I've got a little video here that I want to show y'all. This is our mother plants. This is where we're going to be taking all of our clones for basically all the propagation that happens at the farm comes off of these beds right here. And like I had said before, our water flows through the fish tank, and then these are all set in dual root zone pots on top of floating rafts here. And after this video plays, we'll come through, and I've got some more profile shots, I suppose, showing kind of how that's all set up. But we found this to be extremely effective. I know when I first kind of came and took over, they were doing just straight deep water culture and trying to, run clones in the deep water culture and then transplant them up into soil when they were, teens at that point, which was a nightmare and had very poor results. So this is a way that we've found that really helps the cannabis plants thrive, because you're not necessarily dependent entirely on solely the aquatic layer. You get the help of that extraterrestrial layer, the microbiome that's involved there, and then it also gives you an opportunity to supplement with things you might not necessarily want or need in the whole system. You don't necessarily want to pay the costs to bump nutrients on 100,000 gallons or 100,000 liters, of water when you can do it to 100 and get the plants what they need. So that's how the mom plants here work. They really, really like this dual root zone setup. We're in here in this jungle at least every 2 weeks, just having to do a major defoliation. I know last week when we did it, we pulled just over 100 pounds of foliage out of the moms. So, that all went to the compost pile. It's great biomass, and we're harnessing those nutrients, but it does get a bit crazy in there when these plants really tap in and get the benefits of the dual root zone pots. And now we have kept a lot of these plants for, north of a year. By that point, they're kind of monstrous and they become a bit unruly. When we know that they'd keep growing in there without any kind of problems, but just for the physical constraints kind of that we're working in and trying to keep them out of the lights and keep them well maintained for just labor flow, we won't typically keep our moms for any longer than that. They're just kind of get too big at that point, which is a good problem to have, I know, but you gotta do what you gotta do. This is a little video showing the whole greenhouse. We'll kind of pan over everything. You can see our moms here. Kind of ran out of room on the table, so we had to resort to the floor. But as you can see, a bunch of happy, healthy ladies. We're doing, like I said, containers on the rolling benches. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what exactly is going into the mix in those here in a bit. But that is the facility, and the mama's there. So here are some of those shots I was saying. I think they really illustrate benefits of the dual root zone. We'll do a 3-gallon pot up there on top with our soil mix of choice, whatever it's going to be. Like I said, we've been playing with a few different things. So whatever that, I guess, flavor of the month is goes in that soil layer up top. And then a layer of burlap. We've got a nice big hole cut in there so they can put a lot of roots through. And then there's a net cup down in there that holds your, we use hydrogen. You can really use any kind of inert media. I've seen, crushed granite, lava rocks, a whole bunch of different things will work. As long as you're making sure you're non-reactive with the system water, it'll work. So the roots will punch through there. And as you can see, once they hit the water, they'll really spread out and fill the bed underneath them, to the point where when it's time to take moms out of there, sometimes it can be a bit of a task to wrestle all the roots out and get everything out of there. But again, kind of a good problem that we deal with. Okay, so when it comes to propagation, at our farm at least, there's a couple of different things that we consider. Obviously, new genetics coming onto the farm presents a whole lot of situations. It can be really exciting. It can also be very scary when you start to think about different bugs and stuff like that that can come in from the new hot cut in town or whatever the case may be. So when we do propagate at our farm, we prefer to do it from seeds. We've had bad experiences with clones before. So really any of our pheno hunts, any of our strain selection is going to come from popping seeds and doing a pheno hunt. Really the process that's involved in that, for those who aren't familiar, you're going to take your pack of seeds, throw them all down and start growing some plants. There comes a time in every young plant's life where changes start to happen. You can kind of see on the right side of the screen there, they can be identified as either, your typical male or female plants. We're not interested in doing any kind of breeding projects, whether intentional or otherwise, at the farm. So all of our males, they unfortunately get the boot out of the farm, and then we will start what turns into quite a long process of pheno hunting those strains, where we'll keep that original seedling, grow her up to a size where we can get a couple of clones off of her. We typically like to see about 10 to 12, grow those up. And then once they're old enough to flower and really give us a representative sample of their phenotype, we'll, fill a table with 100 plants, try to get a good sample size of everybody, grow them and see what happens. Obviously, then there's a lot of selection that comes into play, both from pest and disease resistance to finished product. How does it look? What's the bag appeal? How does it smell? And then, of course, how does it test out, and what are the kind of effects that you're getting? That's a very long and intensive process, but one that I think is critical, especially when you're at scale like this. You can't just throw all your eggs in a basket and hope for the best. the market's kind of unforgiving, unfortunately. Certainly in Oklahoma right now, it's pretty flush. People are pretty selective. So if you're not bringing your best to the table, you're going to have a pretty hard time trying to move stuff out on the open market. It's kind of plain as that. And really, that's always been the case in the cannabis industry. But we're certainly seeing that now in Oklahoma. So the pheno hunt's super important. You want to make sure what you're putting out there, especially when you're doing it a couple hundred times, is gonna pay for all your efforts and all the labor and work that goes into it. Something else to consider, there can be some tricky legalities with getting new strains and things like that and stable genetics in relatively young cannabis markets. To get something that's, got the state stamp on it, got its metric certified, stickers and all that into the facility, much less something that's clean, something that is going to be, produce flower that you actually want. That's a really tricky thing and something that takes a lot of time. So for that reason, once we find something we like, we want to be sure to keep it. So everything at our farm, aside from brand new genetics, is done from cloning. And really that makes up all of our production plants are taken from cloning. We'll rarely, we do some auto flower stuff, but that is very much still in its R&D, doing it for extraction kind of phase, and very much still looking for good genetics on that front as well. So at the farm, we're taking clones, a lot of clones. Sometimes 1,000 clones will go into making up one of our generations. The process for that, I think, is outlined pretty well established. We're doing peat plugs at the farm right now for the sake of consistency and the volume we're running. So we'll do those in a little mild nutrient solution. And then, as everybody knows, when you take your cuts, you got to dip them in some sort of rooting compound. Now, we've done quite a few different trials out at the farm and find that really the biggest factor, more than what brand you want to tout as the best of the best, is really mom health. It all comes down to how happy and healthy is that mom. That's gonna influence your stick rate more than anything else, in my experience. So at the end of the day, don't worry as much, at least when it comes to your cloning process, on brand names and methodology. I know there's a lot of ways to spend a lot of money on fancy cloning kits and all self-contained cloning apparatuses and stuff like that, but invest that time and effort in your mom, and that in my opinion will pay dividends a lot faster than the hot new Clonomatic 5000. But another super important thing that I think needs to be brought up when talking about cloning is that this is really the phase where your pest management program starts. I guess if you think about it as a circle, it starts with the moms and there's no beginning or end to it, but this is a great point to interject in that cycle and really get focused when it comes to your pest management problems, or at least your program and how you're going to respond to that. So this can involve sprays, dips, beneficial insects, kind of dependent on what's going on in the farm at that moment. If we're seeing any kind of outbreaks or stuff that very much affects what we're going to do for these clones, we'll cater, from month to month as we're doing each generation, we'll cater our clone taking process to, are these going to get a dip? What are they going to get? Whether it's going to be something for bugs or antifungal or whatever the case may be. We're looking at our moms before we're taking our clones, making that kind of decision and then implementing that. So, like I said, pest management, super critical. I've got some of the baddies here, and the king of the pests themselves. I think one that gives a lot of people nightmares is the russet mite. But there are ways to deal with all these things. I know in a brand new clean facility, and everybody will always say it, and it's absolutely true, prevention is better than treatment. Keeping them out of the grow is the critical first step. Unfortunately, that's not always a possibility. As anybody who's taken over a farm knows, or who's gotten cuts from their buddy who says, "Oh no, man, they're totally clean. Don't worry about it." Bugs find their way in, and you've got to have something in place ready to deal with those. Not only to deal with them, but to spot them as soon as you possibly can, and to deal with them. Because sometimes you inherit problems, and sometimes they just happen. So our big, I guess the two pillars that we really stand on out at our farm are beneficial insects and then biological sprays. So what we really do, we'll use a couple of different knockdown products if things get crazy. There's suff oil, or in extreme cases, if you've got to go to sulfur, as long as you're doing it in a veg only kind of situation. Those are options that we'll use if situation calls for it. But really, we're trying to fight the problem of bugs with biology. That, in my opinion, is really the only way to combat the problem, is turn the natural predators or natural solutions to these pest problems against them. There's a number of different ways you can do that. I know Steve, you spoke this morning about a lot of cool stuff that if anybody hadn't heard about it, go back and give that one another listen. I know the IMO options and the IPMO options. There's some really fascinating stuff happening there, where I've just started cooking some rice this morning to get my boxes out with a couple of different mixes as far as insect frass and stuff like that goes. And I want to do some trials on that. But for us at the farm, what we're doing right now is, what we're doing right now at the farm is a lot of biological sprays. I say a lot. It's really, once, twice a week we'll come in there. And I think something that's super important for doing any spray regimen, really, whether it's biological or otherwise, is your application equipment. I'm a big fan of the gram products. They can be a bit pricey, but when it comes to getting uniform and consistent coverage, their cold fogger unit is excellent. We really like that one. It's an ultra low volume applicator, so it does super fine particle sizes, and you're able to get away with a lot lower volumes and get the same amount of efficacy. So you're using less product, spraying less, and then when it comes to anything you're putting out on your plants, the lower amount of water volume is gonna, you're not running into as many problems with humidity issues or getting any kind of powdery mildew coming up from when you're spraying real crazy. So that's kind of how we deal with problems. Preventing those is also super important. So we're doing things like we have our boot bats at every entrance into the farm that will, keep, all the things that are riding around on people's shoes out of there. We do scrubs, so everybody's able to change out of their clothes from home as soon as they come to the farm. Because we have people at home who have, gardens of their own. They're, growing their own medicine for themselves. And we don't want to, by all means, we don't want to take away from that. And in fact, we, encourage and seek people who have a passion to the degree where they keep plants at home and are interested in doing that. And you can learn some fantastic things from, something somebody was able to try on their problem plant in the back that, we don't necessarily get to experiment with when you're dealing with a couple thousand plants at a time. So that's fantastic, but it also can have risks. Somebody's got a problem at home, it's very easy for that to ride on their clothes, ride in the beanie, and come right into the grow. And now, guess what? You've got a big problem at the grow too. So for that reason, we really stress biosecurity. That's why we'll change our clothes, and everybody's got clothes and boots that live at the farm for the different buildings and the different grow rooms in an effort to minimize as much as cross contamination as much as we possibly can. However, like I said, stuff happens. There's cracks in every greenhouse, and these little buggers really want to come in and get your plants. So you will find bugs eventually. I think if you're in this business long enough, it's something that's going to happen. It's, you know, one of those when not if things. So having a routine scouting program in place is really important. And I think that takes a lot of different forms. I try to go out regularly with the Dynalite scope and put a, you know, a real close eye on everything, at least once a week, if not more. But one person's not able to look at all this stuff and see everything that's to be seen out there. So that's where it really becomes a team effort. Well, in many ways, it's a team effort, but the pest scouting is a team effort as well. It's important that everybody kind of knows what to look for, what you want to see, what you don't want to see out in the garden, so that, you know, when we're walking down watering or checking for moisture level, and you see that weird funky leaf, you can clip it, throw it in a Ziploc bag, seal it up, and stow it away to be looked at and examined later if stuff's busy. I mean, I'd love when stuff goes wrong to deal with it right then. It's not always the case, but it's important that everybody knows that, you know, they play a vital role in, you know, keeping an eye out and identifying problems like that while they're still as small as possible, so we can get it fixed and nipped before it becomes a big, you know, room-wide problem that is not able to be dealt with. So that's kind of how we approach the pest management problem. Something else that we use a lot at the farm, we do a lot of K&F inputs. I'd like to give a big shout out to Steve and Chris Trump as well. I won't get into the details. They've got tons of informational videos out there on how exactly to do and collect some of these different things, and, you know, step-by-step instructions that I'm not going to step on. They work extremely well and stick to that. But some of the ones that we do at the farm, we do IMO collection. You'll see we got our little rice box there. Labs, I think, is one that is certainly the one that we use most at the farm. We've got a regular routine where we're inoculating that into the system on a bi-weekly basis. And then you'll also see the picture there is we've done a little FAA to give a little added punch to some of our irrigations. And that was actually the result of the old family fish fry when we decided we had a few too many fish in the tanks. All the heads and skeletons made it into that box and came out as a nice FAA for us. But these things I think are super critical. I really believe that aquaponics hinges on the microbiology that makes up, you know, every living part of the system. And as much diversity that we can have in there, especially ones that aren't necessarily the bug in the jug, but it's something that's come from your own indigenous environment, is going to be more well tailored for your farm and your area. So doing things like the IMO collection really helps to beef up the system with what's important and what works best in this environment. So that's, you know, the main reason we do some of the different K&F inputs at the farm. As you can see in some of these pictures, I'd like to declare that it has been fairly effective. We do see quite a bit of fungal growth, both in the beds, in the containers, and then in the microscope as well. While I myself am maybe not the best at identifying specific species, you can definitely tell that our biodiversity and activity in our soil has gone up since we've started implementing a lot of these different things. And we're happy to see that, whether it's in the compost pile or in the pods. So as kind of everything makes its way through the greenhouse, we're vegging for 4 to 6 weeks. We run a 1 gallon pot pop it up to a 5 gallon, and then veg in there before we go to flip to flower. Brandon Russ was talking earlier from Bokashi Earthworks. We've had great success with some of his mixes before. We are starting now to transition to a mix of that Bokashi and then some of our own compost that we've made out at the farm from, you know, our foliage and waste products that come both out of the fish system and then out of defoliations and things like that. So we're kind of trying to enrich that, build biodiversity in there, and then we're incorporating that back into the system. Oh, and forgive me, I just noticed what time it was. I'll try to speed through the last bit of this here. So we veg, we flower for another 8 to 10 weeks. When we move everything up, we do typically go for a big defoliation, strip everything down, train it out under the trellis so that we're getting maximum light penetration into our canopy. We are running HPS lights because that's what we inherited. I would love to say we had LEDs, but the investment is not quite there yet. But we do have a lot of success with the HPSs. So harvest time is a big question. I think that's something that the Oklahoma market is slowly coming around to, is when the time to properly harvest is. For a long time, everybody was harvesting really early. As soon as the buds started getting juicy, everybody was ripping them down. For me and my belief at the farm, we go off trichome color. So we'll get the Dynalite, or even on the budget side, a little jeweler's loop. Take it to the trichome heads, and you can kind of see the different colors here. We'll go for about 15-20% amber, and once we're seeing that, we know, okay, it's time to start stripping them down and getting them ready for the top. There's also quite a few considerations because we do have a extract company that's vertically integrated with us. So if we know something's going to extract, there's a few considerations there in terms of timing for when we want to chop that down. At our place, we defoliate, chop it down. It'll hang typically for 2 weeks at about 60 and 60 temperature and humidity. And then we'll throw it in the tubes and start our curing process, which can take another 2 to 4 weeks. Get it trimmed up, tested, all that fun stuff before sending it on to its final destination, as it were at either the dispensaries or our processing lab. These are some of the new strains we just kind of finished up with. This is this month's harvest, actually, out for testing right now. So some pretty little frosty gals to look at right there. We are super happy with our GMO. The terp profile on that right now is excellent, if I do say so myself. It smells like a big old bowl of soup is what I think every time I pop the jar open. Growing the plants, super important, but equally, if not more important, is the compliance, especially in a medical market. It doesn't matter if you've got the best looking plants in the world, if you can't put that tag on it and certify that the lab has said, hey, it's safe for consumption and this is what's in the product you're selling, you really don't have any business being on the market. So compliance is a key part of that. So that's OMMA, our medical marijuana authority. Metric is our seed to sale processor or seed to sale program that tracks everything in the state. So compliance with those is critical and can really in itself be a full-time job just to keep all the ducks in the row. At the end of the day, though, I think if there's one takeaway from my presentation, it should be that teamwork is really what makes the whole farm operate. Having a good, dependable group of people there that can, care, first of all, about what they're doing and producing a quality product, care about the plant and the patients and the quality of the work that they do. Everything else after that is pretty secondary. I can't say thanks enough to my team. We wouldn't be able to do what we do out there without them all. So that's my big thing is build a good team, and then everything else kind of follows after that. But this is some of the social deets here. Like I had said earlier, we are vertically integrated at the farm, so we sell the bulk of our product actually to our dispensaries. We've got one in Norman as well as Oklahoma City. You can see kind of the links there if you want to follow them on Instagram. There's also our processing lab that works with us listed out there. They do a wide variety of different concentrates that are available out on the Oklahoma market right now. And of course, if you're trying to keep up with me and the team out at the farm, at Vertica Farms, okay is how you would do that. But I think that's all I got. I'm sorry I didn't leave too much time for questions, but if there's anything critical, I suppose, that anybody wants to ask me, please feel free.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Bain. It's always fun to see your facility and always fun to take a tour down there. Unfortunately, I think we're about out of time for questions, but I do apologize that we ran a little late with the panel there beforehand, but thank you so much for the great presentation, man.
No, not a problem at all. I can't say thanks enough for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Please support these companies. They took the time to educate us during this conference. If you're looking for more education on aquaponic cannabis, please consider the Aquaponic Cannabis Masterclass at apmjclass.com, featuring over 7 days of in-depth, hands-on educational content with Marty Waddell and Stephen Reisner as your guides through the aquaponic cannabis universe. We'll cover everything from construction of large commercial facilities, home-sized systems, backyard systems, nutrients, pest control, diseases, everything you can think of, and so much more. So be sure to check that out at apmjclass.com. And if you're looking for aquaponic cannabis or living soil pest control courses, please check out thepestclass.com, where we have a huge in-depth course on pest control, how to make your own biocontrols, as well as in-depth guides and identification guides for a whole slew of different pests that you might encounter in your aquaponics garden. And it's not strictly just geared towards cannabis, it's also geared towards vegetables as well. So be sure to check that out if it's something you think you might need to improve in your education.